Hey everybody, welcome to Bura. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about the Great Resignation and what it means for the e-learning industry. All right, welcome back. So as you can see, Udemy is up today. It's up quite a bit. And if we look at the 6-month trend, basically all those downtrends have pretty much been broken here. So basically, are we going to see a new uptrend or what's going to happen here? Now, of course, we are still down quite a bit from the peak here, which is again 55%, and it kind of peaked down at 60%, but we'll see what happens here. Now, of course, you can see all the other indices here are kind of down a bit. It's kind of a weird day, and it's kind of a weird time, but nevertheless, let's talk a little bit about the Great Resignation and what it means for the e-learning industry. Now, one of the things about the Great Resignation is that a lot of people that are resigning their jobs are from the service sector. And I used to work in the service industry. Actually, I had a job at Starbucks, which was one of my best jobs ever. I could probably do a whole other video about that. But nevertheless, I actually did enjoy that job quite a bit. However, it is hard work. I've had several jobs in the service industry, when I was a teenager, etc. And that's just one, and it is kind of tough here. And one of the things that's happening with the Great Resignation is that a lot of these people are quitting their jobs. Now, I think the cushiest thing that you could have done in the pandemic was to work remotely from a more remote location. So, in a small town where there's lots of nature and but still the amenities here. And this is something that you could have done. And it could have been quite good. All you needed really was a laptop. And you can even see that Apple came out with their iMac. And, their iMac was basically made for kind of like working from home, which is actually not so bad. But that was probably the cushiest thing. But not everyone has the ability to do that. Like if you need to go and, do something, right, outside, like if you're a delivery person, you don't have that opportunity. So it's those kind of people that are looking at that kind of quality of life and that flexibility of life that are leaving here. Now, what does this mean here? So is the remote work going to stay? And I think it absolutely is. I think that a lot of people, since they purchased houses farther away from the usual centers and the big bustling cities, that they're probably going to want to stay there. Because once you buy a house or a property or whatever, you tend to kind of stick there. And what's interesting about the Great Resignation is that in places where there are more rentals, more people tend to resign here. Because in rentals, you can kind of just get up and move wherever. But if you own a house, then you tend to keep your job because you want to be consistent to pay off your mortgage, etc. Right? Because your mortgage is probably pretty big, especially because housing has gone up so much during the pandemic. So a lot of these people who are resigning, they just want to do something else with their time, and they do kind of want that lifestyle. Now, what does this mean for the e-learning industry? Well, the best way to be a remote worker is obviously to learn to code. If you can code, or at least if you're in marketing and you know code, or you want to be a designer and you know code, this is going to be the biggest advantage to you because that kind of work can be done remotely here. Now, lots of companies have tried to do this in the past, and with varying levels of success, but the pandemic really made it. It basically affirmed all these companies that have been working remotely, and myself included. I didn't think I could do it. And I don't know if I could have started Mammoth remotely. I don't think I could have. I think I needed to train the people in person. And that's probably a story for a different time. But, having an office is not necessarily a bad thing. But, right now, Mammoth is going to go remote and it's going to stay remote pretty much forever until perhaps maybe in the future, if we have lots of employees, we might need to have an office or two in 2 different cities. But nevertheless, so what's that going to do to the e-learning industry? Well, one of the things that people do with the e-learning is to learn technology, whether it's something like AWS or Google Cloud or learning to code. And the thing about these kinds of careers is that you have to constantly be updating. Like, Google Cloud will have a huge update. AWS will have an update. Xcode with iOS will have a huge update, and you'll need to learn it, right? So you'll need to purchase a course. And of course, you may be able to go into YouTube videos here and there. But if you have a course where people have already, cut out all the BS and all like the, like and subscribe, all that stuff, right? And someone that's really good at teaching you, getting you from A to B as quickly as possible, you're just going to buy that course. So the thing is that if you really start to see people move back into the cities, even if that does happen, and even if big tech really wants to do that, I do think that there's going to be a ton of people that are going to want to stay remote forever. They just like that flexibility, and that's actually not a bad thing, right? I think it's probably better. People have more time. And more, they'll have more time to themselves, and they'll arguably be happier. And the most important thing, they'll probably be more productive too, right? Because the happier employees are, the more productive they will be, right? It's just kind of business 101. So I think it's absolutely going to happen. And the thing is that people that want this kind of lifestyle are going to want to purchase these kinds of courses here. Because if you can get a job coding or anything within technology, then you can basically work from wherever. And that could mean, like, you could buy something next to the mountains and go skiing in the morning before you enter work, right? I mean, that would be amazing, right? Or you can, I know lots of people who go running in the mountains for their lunch hour, and that's awesome because you can't do that in the city, right? Especially because some of the, the city life isn't bad, right? But a lot of people like being next to nature and going out and doing stuff in nature. And now you have the opportunity to get the big bucks and do that here. Now, the other thing that is kind of another cross current on this is that some companies will pay you based on where you live, right? So like, let's say if you live, in San Francisco, but you move someplace to a small town where the incomes aren't as big, then they'll pay you less because of that location here. And I think eventually the top talent will just not say that. Like, we're just gonna they'll take the best deal of working remotely, and you might have to fly into Seattle or San Francisco or New York or Houston or wherever. You might have to fly into the headquarters occasionally. Which actually isn't that bad of a thing. It does break things up, right? Because working from home can get extremely monotonous, and you do need to break things up here. So, but having said that, I do think that e-learning is basically going to be. I'm bullish on e-learning for the next 10 years. There's always something, because what's happened is that people realize the efficiency of e-learning, and they'll never go back to learning in college. And I already see this among really young people. They kind of don't want to go for 4 years to a degree, and it's kind of a little bit antiquated. But having said that, I do, if you really want to do something for a future, going to a 2-year or a 4-year degree is probably the best thing you can do. You can pick computer science, and even if you do have other interests, that's the time to explore it, right? When you're 18, it used to be when you're 18, you're really an adult and you have to do things that that adults do, and you really have to kind of grow up in those times. But you know what? If you need to do something, 18 to 22 is a great time to just do it. If whatever it is, like if you want to play professional sports or act or do anything that you want to do, that's a great time to do it. Doing things before you're like 23, 24 is not necessarily a bad thing. However, if you do a degree like a computer engineering or a computer science degree, then obviously that's going to be good too. But you remember, you can always do other things outside of that, right? You don't always have to sit on social media. There's things that you can do, and I highly recommend that you probably, in those days, if you're between the ages of 18 and 24, just don't do as much social media. Experience life as much as you can. That's probably a good thing to do. But at the same time, though, you should be learning online at any given time. And I realized this when I was in university. In fact, I started learning online and getting better marks, right? But this was a long time ago, and the e-learning industry isn't as good as it used to be. And even today, when I look at and I want to learn something, I almost instantly go to the top e-learning people. I don't usually go to the typical places to learn, right? And that's maybe a story for a different time here. But nevertheless, the movement of working from home is probably going to stay where it is. It might slowly creep down back into the offices, but I do think a lot of employees are going to want to do that. Some employees will want to go back to the office full-time, part-time, but there's going to be a bunch of people that will never go back to the office, right? They want to live in a smaller town, get a bigger house, maybe live closer to nature, do the things that that you can do in these small towns, and you still have Amazon Prime. You can get pretty much anything you want here. So, in conclusion, I think that e-learning is bullish for the next 10 years, and the fact that some people will want to disconnect from the corporate and going to the offices, and they want to work from home on their computers. And in order to do that, you have to learn technology, and e-learning and technology are very intertwined. So that's something that that I'm pretty bullish on. Now, of course, I can go through the bearish argument. In fact, I've done that before, but maybe I should do that in another video, where I think the most bearish case for the e-learning industry altogether, not just Udemy, but the e-learning industry altogether, what would be the most bearish case for that here, right? Because you always have to look at the opposite. Even though I'm in the e-learning industry, you do have to look at the opposite. So that concludes this video. If you really like this channel, you can back this project on Kickstarter here. So this Kickstarter is absolutely amazing. And if you do want to work from home, being a Python automation engineer will be the best way to do it, because automation engineers will most likely have a job it's one of the best areas that you can learn here. And there's so many different levels here. If you're a complete beginner, you can start with level 1, and there is so much practical projects in this here. If you want to get a job, you need to have practical projects to your resume. So even if you are in a computer science degree, you want to take this course, because it will give you a ton of projects that you can use on your LinkedIn or resume here. And not only that, we do have Web3 blockchain automation. It's absolutely amazing. I highly recommend that you pledge for this here. And the more you pledge, the more mammoth courses you get. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in another video.